data that's sent from the clients to the server doesn't have to just be embedded in the HTTP request params. For example, often we see links where the link itself has some semantic meaning to it. So for example, the path that's specified in that link or the path that's specified in the HTTP request actually has data embedded into it that we'd like to extract. And this is, for example, a typical thing that you'll see in a REST architecture, which we'll talk about later in this course. So let me give you an example. Let's say rather than just sending a request where we're embedding all of the search strings into the HTTP request parameters to search in our contacts, let's say, for example, we wanted to be able to have links that looked like /search A, and that would return the list of all contacts that started with A, or /search AB, and it would give us all the contacts that started with AB. Now, why would we want to do this? Well, it's usually easier to share a link that looks very nice and clean, where it's just embedded into the path rather than having a question mark and all of these request parameters following off the end of it. And sharing a post, obviously, isn't something you can do. You can't just share a link for an HTTP post. So often we want to have nice, clean-looking links that are easy to access in the browser and make sense for sharing or other purposes. So there's an easy way to do this in Spring to extract data that might be specified in the request path rather than in the request parameters. And the way we do that is first we have to create a request mapping that is to something variable. So we're going to say @search, and then we're going to do something interesting here. We're going to add a bracket, and we're going to say the string that we're searching for. And then we'll close this off. And what this is going to tell the Spring Dispatcher servlet to do is to look at the request path. And anything that is search / any string or any integer or anything is going to be routed to this request. So what we're doing here is we're specifying a path variable. And that's what the open braces and close braces around this string is just defining a variable. And string doesn't represent the type here, I want to note. This is just an arbitrary identifier that I'm giving for this variable. So I'm saying look for requests where the path has this format, /search / some path variable that I'm looking for that has an arbitrary value. Now what we then need to do is tell the Spring Dispatcher servlets how to extract those path variables that we care about and get them into the method parameters. So what we do is we say @path variable, and then we can say string. And what that will tell Spring to do is automatically extract this string from the path and convert it into this parameter for the method call. So what this allows us to do is to have some of the data embedded in a request parameter and some data embedded in a path variable, and we can combine and mix and match these approaches for extracting data from the request. We can have some data that lives in the path variable, or we can have all of the data living in the request path and extracted via the path variables, or we can have all of the data living in the request parameters, or any mixture of them. And all of them serve the same purpose, to tell the dispatcher servlet how to extract information that the client has embedded into the request and convert it into the arguments that are needed to be passed to the method. So if we want to go and change our architecture and change how the data is passed from the client to the server, all we have to do is go and update these variables, or these annotations specifying how the method parameters are mapped by the dispatcher servlet. So we could change this path variable to a request parameter, or this request parameter to a path variable, and we can do that over and over. And it separates our logic from the logic of extracting the information from the request or from the request path.